Hello everyone, welcome to Z Academy. In today's video, I'll be bringing you into the world of components. I'll first start off by giving a brief introduction of what components are, then I'll identify what the differences are between functional components and class components. Next, I'll introduce to you what self-closing components are, as well as what wrapper components are. Now, let's head right in. So what are components? Components are the basic building block of every React application. It is basically reusable pieces of code that you will be able to use repeatedly throughout the whole project. It is also similar to HTML tags in that you will be able to pass in IDs and a variety of classes into the component itself through props. It can also be self-enclosing or a wrapper, just like how tags are used in any HTML files. Next, let's check out what functional components and class components are. Functional components are basically components that are defined as a function, while class components are defined as a class. Do note that the React team does recommend using functional components over class components. So, throughout my videos, I'll be using only functional components. This is the basic syntax of what functional components would look like. Do take note that it is recommended to have the name of the component be the same as the name of the file. It is so that it will be easier to figure out which file the component lives in. For this video, I have defined some basic styles in the index.css file which I'll be using throughout this video. Let's start off by defining what this functional component would return. We would want a div tag with the following class name. Box, which would basically give it a shape of a box, and it would have a dark background. Now, let's quickly run the ad. Now, it is still a blank page because we have not called the component. Let's do so here. So what we are doing here is basically importing the component from this functional component.js file. Next, we will call on the functional component to return whatever is defined in the component itself. So in this case, we'll be returning a div with two classes, box and box dark. So this functional component is basically the same as this, as we can see here. There is no change at all. So what components does is that it returns whatever HTML text is defined in the component itself. Also notice that this is closed by a slash and right arrow bracket. This is basically the syntax for self-enclosed components. It is also important to note that components are only able to return one HTML tag. So what this means is that you are unable to return a variety of components here. But what you can do is to enclose all of this into a single tag itself. On a side note, this is basically a shorthand for React Fragments. And the purpose of this is simply to allow you to group components together without using any real HTML tags. We can go to inspect and look at HTML code here. As we can see, there is no real text that is surrounding these 5 components. And div root is simply the parent tag that encompasses all of the components that we have written in our project. And it is also defined in public index.html here. Now let's move on to wrapper components. There could be various use cases where we would want to have a wrapper component. For example here, we might want to have a container where we would be able to enclose all of these components in. I have previously defined a component called wrapper component. Now let's take a closer look as to what this wrapper component does. The wrapper component returns a div with a class of container. And within this div tag, there is this children prop, which I'll be talking more about in my next video. But what this basically does is that this children props basically refers to all of the components or tags that is between the wrapper component itself. In simple terms, this is the parent, and this would be the children of the parent, which is the wrapper component. This could be useful as it provides a default structure to display child components. We can easily change the layout of the container simply by going to the CSS file and align the elements either by the right or the left. These are just simple examples of how we can easily change the structure that contains the child components. If you find this video helpful, do give it a thumbs up, share with your friends. Feel free to also leave a comment below as to how I will be able to help you learn better. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.